Students are unable to be on campus and have lost the resources that provide a suitable and engaging learning environment. We recognize that this is not easy for anyone, but considering that we are still paying full tuition to sit on our bed for a Zoom call, a little lenience in our grading options does not seem unreasonable. I am a little perplexed why some colleges are not considering credit, no credit, pass, no pass, or alternative grading on the table for such a tumultuous time for students and faculty. This video was made because of all the people that I know that are battling homelessness, loss of family members, mental illness, and or the general feeling that their college has abandoned them this semester. It's a privilege, yes, to go to college, but at the same time, this is not the standard that we should be striving for. This is a documentary and an outline of the arguments for credit, no credit. This video is going to be outlining a lot of the reasons why we need credit, no credit, counter arguments against it, and also establishing possible paths forward. This video is split up into sections, so if you want to, you can just skip forward on the different chapters. As an activist noob, I'll briefly go over the events that the students at CSULB have taken because I was on the sidelines for the main events. So let me talk about the people that have organized the events, known as a collective called CSULB Students United. The collective is led by a group of 7. Carolyn, Daniel, Harmony, Kendall, Ainsley, Roxanne, and Christina. Those 7 have put their free time to contribute towards pushing for credit, no credit for the larger student populace. Carolyn was the one who started everything with a petition. Then afterwards, they organized a drive-through protest along with a Zoom meeting with our provost. And if you don't know what a provost is someone that kind of correlates relations between students and faculty. So if you're curious about any of the events that I mentioned and also want to reach out to CSULB Students United, I put a link to their website in the description down below. So check them out when you have the time. It's pretty admirable, like regardless of what your feelings are towards credit, no credit, that these students decided to organize this all and managed to get the progress that they did. This section will be covering any of the biases and possible benefits that I'll be getting from this video, just for added context and also so that it's more transparent to you as the audience. The first question that you probably have is, can I make money from this? No, obviously not. I don't even have enough subscribers nor the view hours to even make money from the videos. And secondly, I wouldn't want to put ads on a video like this anyway. My college is California State University of Long Beach. This is important because some of the things I'll be mentioning in this video are more location specific. They're not fully applicable to every single school system out there, but I think a majority of the topics that I talk about can definitely be applied to most colleges nationwide. Now that you know what college I go to, I need to explain where I stand in the campus food chain of sorts. So I am a second-year undergraduate student. I also got accepted into the President's Scholarship. I'm pretty grateful for it, but this also means that my perception is that they don't have malicious intent, but their actions or interactions have had malicious outcomes. Additionally, since this video is going to be about grading, so I have 2 projected A's, 2 projected B's, and possibly 1 C. Yes, I theoretically can use credit, no credit, but that's only if prereqs for major required courses are allowed this time around. The last time that felt like more of an exception rather than the rule. So this next section is going to be about the basic reasons. Pandemic and their 2 siblings, unemployment and mental illness have ravaged the land. We adopted a pandemic in April. It is amazing to see how much they have grown. They make such a fine young adult, rivaling Renesmee's growth. Their sibling unemployment's growth has ended, and actually they're kind of growing shorter, but you know what? They're still maintaining a healthy 20 million Americans. Now they're partly rebranded as Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. So I think they're doing okay. And also the oh-so-gracious US government decided to dole out $1,200 to every citizen. Wow, that is so much money. Now let's talk about mental illness. It should not be a surprise to you that the pandemic and financial instability has caused a surge of mental illness. What CSULB has offered is Zoom calls with counseling and psychological services, which isn't enough for a decent portion of people. The final basic reason is that other CSUs like Cal Poly Pomona, CSU Channel Islands, and other colleges like MIT, Drexel, University of Pennsylvania, etc. have offered credit no credit or their variant of it. This is crucial to know because students with credit no credit have an advantage over students that don't have credit no credit. And I'll explain in more detail later. Additionally, in the same vein of credit no credit, a lot of students are advocating for a reduction of tuition, but that's actually a more complex topic by itself. I'll have to leave the tuition video off later after my wisdom teeth surgery right before Christmas. So happy holidays to me. So now we are in the Christmas ham part of the video, which is counterarguments. There are a lot of very interesting counterarguments. So the first one is that credit no credit will harm students through grad school and employers' point of views. Playing the concerned card, I see. This is a valid concern because the individual entities within these two parties have wishy-washy policies for credit no credit. They can either lower or raise the importance of grades in their decision making. If they lower it, yeah, that would reflect more current reality. And if they raise the amount that grades are influencing their decisions, well, frankly, that doesn't look good optically because that seems very elitist right now. So basically, I do not want to bank on the resume scanner to just automatically know that I went to CSULB and that CSULB did not offer credit no credit. If they are working the same way that they already worked before the pandemic, they're just gonna be gleaning off everyone who has the highest GPAs, whether or not they have credit no credit. For grad school applicants, it's a little more different because they're gonna go in depth about your entire transcript and you'll get a chance to explain yourself. The next counterargument that I'll be covering is this is a selfish move because the college has already answered the students and we should be satisfied with their answer. Yes, students are acting on their own self-interest in many different levels and capabilities, but at the same time, they're working for a cause to apply to the overall student population. It's not just them. Additionally, I believe that this move to incorporate credit no credit for this semester and potentially next semester is going to be a mutually beneficial thing for both the students and CSULB itself. Why? Because CSULB has not exactly managed this pandemic the best they could. Some of the things that CSULB has brought upon itself in terms of negative perception involve tuition. If they appease the credit no credit students, a decent amount of heat for tuition will be a little bit off. There are some credit no credit students that are just angry specifically about credit no credit, and they are taking tuition as kind of like a supplementary argument. The next counterargument is going to be, we shouldn't let students exploit the system. Firstly, students should not be the ones determining the eligibility of other students to use credit no credit. Students don't have that kind of authority over other students and as people in general, so Secondly, most universities should have some kind of limit to credit no credit. My university, CSULB, has it as 24. What people can argue about instead is, if they do exploit the system, it's likely that those students will harm themselves in the long run. While that's not for anyone to decide, for anyone other than the student themselves, trying to explain why you have 10 classes for credit is a little difficult. So that's just something to be wary about. And I think people, when they're choosing credit no credit, they'll be able to discern that for themselves. It's undermining their own ability to think about the situation. All right, so within the counterarguments section, we have a subsection, student opinions that are contradictory to the movement. And these are loosely justified with assumptions, so bear with me. The first infighting student counterargument would be, I put in all this effort, I managed to maintain my grades, why can't others? Like, why can't they grind as well? And this argument is just insensitive. Like that's basically what it boils down to. I don't have to argue more than that. It's diminishing a lot of people's struggles right now, and I truly hope that the people who are saying this or a variant of this are just trolling. The next student counterargument is, wouldn't those taking credit, no credit be harming me as a pure letter grade student? And yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about credit, no credit harming you. Zoom University is already harming everyone as a student right now. Future bosses and programs have already taken that into account. You would actually have less to explain, so that's actually an advantage to you. You don't have to explain why you have, maybe 3 credits for classes for 1 semester and go into detail about what your situation was and justify it to strangers, I mean, I think that you should be grateful that you were able to put in that hard work and that the hard work actually turned out the results that you wanted. And you shouldn't be spiteful about other people trying to get an opportunity to represent their grades the way they want them to be. On that note, why is it that representation of your GPA is so important? A lot of students' self-worth is within their grades, whether or not we like it or not. Additionally, if you had done great this semester and you're part of a lower socioeconomic status, or you've struggled with mental illness, or the myriad of things that have happened in 2020, this movement is not to pity you or other people similar to your situation. Ooh, okay, so the next counterargument is, you should have studied for finals instead. This is a funny counterargument to me because basically it's assuming that the people working for the movement are devoting their entire time towards it and are just disavowing their finals entirely, which is not true. I've talked to the collective, and something that's reiterated is that you can put in time if you can, but your finals, your academics, and your mental health come first. There's a lot of stress in the fact that a lot of students are going to be involved after finals. Additionally, this is assuming that some people have the luxury to hunker down and focus on their finals. There are issues that have plagued people throughout the semester. They're not gonna just let up just because they need them to be. So they might feel that credit, no credit is the better option for them, time investment wise. The work for the movement is totally voluntary. It just so happens that credit, no credit is very popular. And that's why a lot of students are pushing for it with a lot of effort. So the next student counterargument is, why was this so late in the semester? Why do it now? Well, many administrators are going like, what? Students are mad because we decided to take away an option that they already received last semester in a situation that has not let up for this semester and actually has gotten worse for many people. Why would they be mad at us for that? Why are the students blamed for the administrators not having done their jobs effectively? They are supposed to be monitoring the student environment. They are supposed to be able to justify why credit, no credit is not going to be used this semester in a way that doesn't anger the student population. Just because CSULB said that credit, no credit was a done deal because it was decided upon in the beginning of the semester with basically the first 3 weeks. It's not a done deal because of the downward trends and everything and the unpredictability of this semester. Doing a reconsideration of the option would have been a great thing to do in the middle of the semester. I think a decent portion of students were not thinking that the school would just neglect that discussion until the very end, and not even by the school's accord. It had to be risen up by the students themselves. Additionally, although there is no hard data to prove this, the last point I want to make is that because this was rushed through this late in the game, that means that a lot of people were probably okay with letter grades until they realized, yeah, this is not working for them. And then they started to panic, which makes sense if a lot of people are in a state of reactionary stress and turmoil, going day by day and making decisions based on the immediate stressors of that day. The next subsection is the counter-arguments that were made during the Provost meeting with CSULB Students United. The first one is stating that CSULB does not have the resources to admit students and also implement the credit, no credit option at the same time. And this one seems a little fishy to me because those two actions don't seem mutually exclusive. Being short-staffed is understandable right now, but tuition has been maintained the same way. A note to make is that satisfying the existing student population should probably take higher priority than admitting newer students, because the issues with the existing student population will not just go away once you admit more students. Those students will also have an issue with the situation right now too. The second key argument he made during that meeting was, even if some schools allow for alternative grading, and even if they're in the same system, it doesn't mean that CSULB can, because CSULB has different resources and a different way of handling things. The thing about this argument is that it's neglecting that the credit-no credit option was already implemented for the spring semester of 2020. Unless they somehow erase all of the data of how to do that option and decided to remove any knowledge of how to do it again, I don't see how that argument stands. I will talk about what other options other than credit-no credit were given and why those were subpar in comparison to credit-no credit. So let's begin with taking an educational leave. First of all, why don't you? I want to say this because a lot of people are not taking into consideration how many things they're leaving behind, how many opportunities they're giving up in taking an educational leave. If a student is struggling financially, it could be in their best interest to try and get a degree as soon as possible and to secure a better paying job as soon as possible. Not to mention the societal standard of being able to graduate on time or as early as possible, otherwise you'll feel like you've been left behind. There's also the pressure of being able to keep up with all of these continuing activities. For example, any kind of research programs that you're involved in, any kind of clubs or organizations that you're part of. If a large part of the student populace decided, F this pandemic, I'm just gonna get out of here and leave for like a good solid year or so, those things will not survive. Additionally, do you depend upon your status as a student for financial aid? That's crucial when considering an educational leave. If you leave, you're not a student anymore. Like, you're not gonna be able to qualify for the money that you would have gotten if you were still a student. The second option is an incomplete. Unfortunately, at the time of this video, an incomplete is effectively worthless because it's only useful if you had completed 70% of your classwork and you're willing to postpone the rest of it for later with a contract with the professor, and you'd have to go through a more intensive process than credit-no credit, because credit-no credit as an option, you just have to like click a few buttons on the student portal or whatever. But with incomplete, you have to justify why you need more time, and you'd have to hope that your professor understands. Moving on, CSULB decided, oh, we'll appease the student body by giving them an extended withdrawal option that started on Friday, that lasted only 4 days, meaning that 2 of those days were the weekend, which is an inconvenience to both students and faculty time. This is a critical thing to note. If you withdraw from too many units and you go underneath a full-time student status, you may be responsible for paying back some of the aid. Some students cannot afford that right now. If you're gonna go for the withdrawal option, you have to have professors that have been updating your grades and are willing to update you within the 4-day window that the school has given you. Let's say you decide to rush through it and, well, it turns out you would have passed. That would have been a waste. Finally, for this section, I want to talk about why credit-no credit is so heavily pushed. Why is it the better option? It's arguable that credit-no credit gives more mental health relief to those with many borderline grades right now. Even though a D, F, or no credit mean that you would have to retake the class, a no credit will not show up on your GPA. Remember that this is just an option, so if you feel like you can still push through and you want to push through, do so. There's nothing holding you back. For this final section, I'll be talking about the possible paths forward. We have the first one, which is that credit-no credit is put into place after the semester. Option 2 is that CSULB decides to ignore our demands and that the students have done their best. What I will say is this: Having been involved in the credit, no credit debate and discussion, I've learned a lot about my student community, and I truly appreciate that. If you agree, please comment if you're comfortable about how you're doing this semester, and also share this video to other people, other college communities that you know need this as well, because maybe they can implement it retroactively or even for next semester. If you disagree or are on the fence with this issue, I would love to hear why and possibly answer your questions after my surgery. I know I couldn't cover everything, but I hope that this video was informative and somewhat inspirational on the topic of alternative grading. I hope to see you around, and time is not our